Hi, I'm John Rabel, the founder of Launch, which is a legal and business advisory firm for small and mid-sized companies. Thought I'd talk a little bit about business entities. I get a lot of questions about what they are, how to set them up, and what business owners need to do to protect themselves from personal liability. So, quickly run through what the four main business entities are that I run across, and maybe some of the issues that business owners might have with specific ones, and then sort of how to set up that personal liability, which I think is extremely important if you own a business. You want to be able to block off your personal assets from any of the debts, obligations, or liabilities that would come up with the business. So the easiest business structure to get started would be a sole proprietorship. There are no formalities, nothing needs to be filed to get it started. You literally can decide you're in business one day and you're up and running. Obviously, sole proprietorship, it's run by one person, they're on their own. Comes with a major issue though, there's no personal liability, so the business isn't actually separate from the owner. Anything that goes wrong in the business can be brought back on the owner. You'll be responsible for all the debts, liabilities, anything that happens. So this is obviously not an ideal situation. You'd want to avoid it if you're owning or starting a business because you're going to be on the hook for everything. Um, Next one that's very common is partnerships. Similar to a sole proprietorship, except there are two people involved. Again, no filing, no formalities to get it up and running. The two of you or plus decide that you're in business, and that's it. You're off and going. Comes with the same major problem that sole proprietorships have, personal liability for everything that goes wrong in the partnership. So you don't want to be on the hook for all of that. Your personal assets are exposed, so no limitation. If the partner does something that screws up, you may be looking at trouble from that as well. So certainly not an ideal situation for a business setup. Next would be LLCs, probably the most common business entity that I'm seeing right now. It involves registering, filing with the state in order to get it set up. It's a relatively simple process though. You file some paperwork, typically the state can kick that back almost immediately if you file online. And then that brings into play limited liability. So, you set up a company separate from you as the individual owner or owners, and then the business is responsible for its own liabilities, debts, obligations, and you can keep your personal assets separate. Next will be a corporation, which again allows business owners to separate themselves and puts the limited liability in play. It's a little more formal than an LLC. It involves some filing with the state as well, a little more paperwork, and then there's more paperwork involved with keeping that up and running and in good standing, and can be more expensive based on the filing fees and annual fees that go along with it. But again, major advantage there. You can get the personal liability, separate yourself off from the company. So that'd be the first thing to think about when you're starting a business is what type of entity is going to suit what you're doing and how you can limit some risk with it. The other thing that comes into play with business entities is what they call corporate formalities, which would be some actions that need to be taken or the way that the company needs to be run in order to make sure you're continuing to keep your liability personally from being exposed to what happens with the business. And generally, when you think about corporate formalities, you think about putting in place the necessary agreements when you get up and running. So with an LLC, it would be an operating agreement. With a corporation, it would be bylaws. And then you're going to want to think about, do you have to have regular meetings? Do you need to document those meetings by putting together minutes that show what happened in them? And are you managing all your agreements properly, documenting the actions that the company's taking? For example, you're going to take out a loan. Did you authorize that on the company level? Have you got an agreement in place that shows the terms and conditions that go with that loan? That's a very broad overview of what corporate formalities look like and some of what they might entail. The specifics, of course, will depend on an individual business, but you want to make sure that you recognize in LLCs and corporations, you might have some formalities that you need to stay on top of and regularly manage in order to make sure you maintain that limited liability and don't expose yourself to any personal risk. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to reach out to me, J Rabel, that's JRAB as in boy, IL at launchstrategylegal.com, or 804-442-6090.